Welcome once again to the Chiefs training camp here in St. Joseph. Yes, it's raining. We had a heck of a thunderstorm earlier. The team started inside at the indoor facility here at Missouri Western State University, but the clouds let up a bit, and the Chiefs are working outside in pads today in some light rain. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen. Our live stream, of course, brought to you by the awesome people at Mosaic, the presenting sponsor of training camp here in St. Joseph. They're incredible, and their holistic approach to healthcare is amazing. They cover southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa, northeast Kansas, and, of course, northwest Missouri. So appreciate them being the sponsor of our live stream. But, Matt, again, this is the elements have been crazy. I said we've visited every planet of the solar system. We were on the, we were on the surface of Mercury to start camp, and now we're just working our way out toward Pluto. We're on the rings of Saturn, but again, some rain today. But Coach uses this actually in mental preparation.
Sure. Well, first of all, this has to be the most rain we've ever had during a training camp, right? I mean, it's
Feels
crazy,
that way.
like every single day, but we're not complaining because it's so cool out here right now. Normally, these are the dog days of camp where it's like 100 degrees every single day. And as you mentioned, we've had that earlier in camp. The first day of pads, it was like 102 degrees out here. But this isn't so bad. It's like high 70s maybe and a little bit of rain earlier. But it's a little slick out there, and you're right. There's going to be conditions later in the season where it rains, and this prepares the guys for those moments. This is also our 6th padded practice in the last 8 days. It's difficult, so any break the guys can get from the weather where it's not super hot is welcomed.
Yeah, Coach talks about making deposits during this time where he pushes them in pads at this specific point of camp, but extracts from that in the months ahead throughout the season. In fact, he uses it. He'll reference it back to a day like today to be in pads in the elements and fighting through it to keep concentration. Our last live stream, we focused on a couple of position groups, notably wide receiver and linebacker. Today we're going to do the same, and we're going to start with the defensive backs. To me, they are one of the big stories of this training camp. The second-year guys, last year, first-year guys, remember the Fab Five. If you watch the first episode of the franchise, they were featured. Unfortunately, Najee Johnson out with a ACL injury will miss the season. But 4 of those guys are left, and they have been terrific. And then you've added some other young guys like a Nick Jones out of Ball State. But collectively, I'm really excited about the defensive backs, not just the corners and the safeties, and then the combination thereof, which is what Steve Spagnuolo loves to do, because the Chiefs defensively are as creative on defense as they are on offense.
I truly believe, at least on paper right now, this might be the best secondary that we've had in Kansas City in a very long time. Just the blend of young, talented players and veteran players who are used to the system now with Steve Spagnuolo. I'm just really excited about what they can achieve this year, and we've been very encouraged throughout this camp. We'll talk more about it later, but specifically those Fab 5 players, and you're right, Najee won't be out there this year, but the Fab 4 right now, those being Trent McDuffie, Brian Cook, Jalen Watson, and Joshua Williams, we've seen real strides, I think, throughout this entire training camp. And if you just take one of those guys out of last season, I don't know if the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. They all had a huge role in going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl, and they've only gotten better over the spring and summer, which is very exciting if you're a Chiefs fan.
One of the great stats, and I've used it and you have too, is the Chiefs set a Super Bowl record playing 8 rookies on defense and special teams. Well, the bulk of those guys were in the defensive secondary. One guy that I've seen take a jump up, and not just physically, first year to second year, but more is on his plate from a leadership standpoint, specifically as the Chiefs change the configuration of their defense from snap to snap. One constant has been Brian Cook, and it's exciting to watch him grow in this camp. The role and how your role's increasing compared to a year ago, and just more on your plate and more responsibility. How's that like for you?
How's it been? It's been good. I think the support I have from my teammates is the biggest thing for me. You know, being comfortable, having the trust that they have instilled in me, and then having the leadership like Nick Bolden and those are the rest of the guys that's out there helping me along the way, as well as my great defensive coordinator Steve Spag. So it's just, getting things in the right order, learning day by day, and just putting things all together for the last and final. Before we get to the actual dance.
As a follow-up to that, you guys play big nickel. There'll be 3 safeties, 3 corners. Could be 4 corners, 2 safeties. Could be, you guys do a whole lot. What about coordinating all that on the back end?
It's nice when we have a bunch of vets. We got Mike that came from Tampa Bay, so he's a little bit more veteran. We had Justin Reed, and then we have still the group from last year, so we all still gelling together, which is pretty well. But having everybody on the same time on the same field at the same time is pretty good for us as a DB group because we all in the same meetings together, so we all hearing the same language. So when we're on the field, it's even more of a familiarity that we have together.
There's the old adage, you got to be twice as good your second year to be as good as you were your first year. What about this second year and the Fab Five? Now, Najee, we lost him, but just this second year and how you've prepared to try to be even better than you were a year ago.
Film study. That's the biggest thing. Just trying to get the guys in the right position. Like, that's my main focus on every play. I had a couple mislapses, mistakes over there, trying to get guys in the right position. So that's on my part. But that's just, things like that. It's good to have them now before we get to the season because right now Coach Spags is throwing a whole bunch of stuff at us. We got Coach Reed throwing a whole bunch of plays you never seen before, so it's pretty good. But you gotta get them kinks out. But just continue to learn, continue to develop, and overall just have everybody in the right quarter to play after play.
Again, Brian Cook. Now, we saw some big plays last year. His play in the AFC Championship game where he tips the ball away and leading to the interception on the deep throw by Joe Burrow is one of those. But Brian Cook is a guy that's shown that he's intelligent. He has to be in this defense. He also has the ability to play the run, and he's getting better all the time, and he's shown it here. We just had a red zone period where the defensive backs again showed up in this camp. But I'm excited about Brian Cook because you look at all those guys last year that were rookies. Are they making the necessary steps to move forward? And to me, Brian Cook is doing that.
Well, especially with Juan Thornhill no longer in town, he's expected to take that step forward because Brian's going to have a much larger role on the defense this year. Such a versatile player who can do so much. I mean, he had 341 defensive snaps last season, 272 special teams snaps, so helped his team in a lot of ways, and we're going to rely on him a lot more this season.
There's 12 corners and 6 safeties on this team. Now, the veterans, Justin Reed, he had an interception earlier today in the red zone against Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs signed Mike Edwards from Tampa Bay as an unrestricted free agent. That was exciting to see him add because there's a lot of really good football in his background. Deion Bush has been a 4-core special teams player. So at safety, there's some depth, and it could lead to a difficult cut. But the safeties in this defense are required to do a lot of things, and the Chiefs sometimes will play 3 safeties and a nickel defense where it's normally 3 corners and 2 safeties. So Spags likes to move that group around and do different things, but there's real depth in this safety position.
Yeah, there definitely is. And you think about Justin Reed, he's excited to take the leap, I think, this season. We talk all about the Fab Five and the rookies from last year, but during the spring, Steve Spagnuolo said that Justin Reed is kind of grouped into that group because this is his second year in the system, even though he's a veteran in this league. You can't understate his impact last year, more than 1,000 total defensive snaps. He trailed only Nick Bolton in terms of snaps on the defense. And you mentioned versatility. I mean, he played at free safety in the box and as a slot corner last year. So Justin Reed's going to have a big season this year, I think. He had an interception during 11-on-11 like 20 minutes ago, jumped the route, looked great. And Mike Edwards is an interesting player in this group. Came over from Tampa Bay, a real ball hawk over the last several seasons, has 7 interceptions and 3 pick sixes since 2020. He had an interception yesterday. So excited to see how these safeties continue to grow.
Shamari Connor is a draft pick out of Virginia Tech, 4th round if I'm not mistaken. There's some real excitement around him, especially early on being a 4-core special teamer. And then Anthony Cook, you'll remember him from his Texas days. He was an undrafted free agent this year. There are 12 corners here. Let's look at that group a little bit. Again, this is where the Fab Five, if you will, showed up last year with Jalen Washington, Joshua Williams jumping up. Trent McDuffie had the injury against Arizona in week 1, but he came rallying back and played awesome football down the stretch, and especially in the postseason. But this is also a team which is deep at the cornerback position, and we've added some new names there. A guy like Nick Jones out of Ball State, a 7th-round pick. If he was in last year's class, it would be the Fab Six.
Yeah, he sure would. It's amazing the difference just 1 year can make, because a couple of years ago, everyone's clamoring, saying the Chiefs need more youth and talent at corner, and now we have an abundance of it. I mean, all these players, I'll start with Trent McDuffie, of course, got hurt in week 1, but when he came back in week 8, he recorded 682 defensive snaps on the season. He earned the top Pro Football Focus grade among all Chiefs cornerbacks as a rookie. He allowed less than 60% of his targets to result in catches at just 44%. He was tremendous, and he's only 22 years old. He's only going to get better. And Jalen Watson, what a season for him. Is a 7th-round pick out of Washington State, has 10 passes defensed and 3 interceptions in 19 total games. And think about when those interceptions occurred. That 99-yard pick six against the Chargers in week 2, then had 2 interceptions in the playoffs. One against the Jaguars, helped close out that game, and one against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. So Jalen has been great in this camp. Joshua Williams as well. I feel like every single day we're taking notes, and every single practice I write down either Jalen Watson or Joshua Williams had a great pass breakup. So we're seeing great things from these young corners. It's very exciting.
Easy to take L'Jarius Sneed for granted. We're kind of easing him back. He's not out here today, but they're just trying to manage his workload so far in camp. He is the best slot blitzer in the National Football League. When they put him in the slot and he blitzes, actually, Matt, he rushes the quarterback like an edge rusher would. His target point, how quick he gets there, the way he can finish plays when he's a slot blitzer. He's getting better on coverage, but L'Jarius Sneed is obviously a real asset to this team, but it's easy to take L'Jarius for granted. But again, he can make big plays. 3 interceptions a year ago.
He had 18 pressures last year as a defensive back, far and away the most pressures of any defensive back in the NFL. And he also had 8 coverage snaps per reception while covering the slot last year. That was 4th in the NFL. That's a nerdy way of saying he's really good as a coverage guy out of the slot. Also just career bests in so many categories last season. He had 108 tackles, 11 passes defensed, 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and you mentioned the 3 interceptions. He led all Chiefs corners with 1,107 defensive snaps, and his 729 snaps on passing plays last season ranked 2nd among all corners. We're very excited about the youth on this team at corner, but having a wily veteran like L'Jarius Sneed, who is so reliable and so versatile, is a huge bonus for the Chiefs.
I'm going to talk about these other guys and just group them together. 2 Nebraska Cornhuskers here. DiCaprio Boodle, who just kind of hangs around. He's right in there. He's made plays in this camp. Best known for duking it out with Travis Kelce early in this camp. Also Lamar Jackson, the other Lamar Jackson in the National Football League, a corner out of Nebraska here. Khalif Hilassi out of Western Kentucky. Also, I don't want to leave anybody out here, Reese Taylor, an undrafted rookie free agent out of Purdue University. But there is another guy that, because he's working with the ones today, we're just going to mention this before we transition to the running backs. Echo Boydo played high school football at Lawrence High School in Kansas, went to Kansas State. He tried out for this team. He wasn't even an undrafted rookie free agent. During rookie minicamp, one of the parts of that is dudes just show up in school buses and try out, bring your own cleats. And he made the team out of that tryout. He was with the first team today against the Red Zone and was outstanding in coverage.
The whole draft process of identifying prospects is so refined these days, but still, some guys just fall through the cracks. Some really good players who just don't get noticed for whatever reason. And Echo Boydo was a really good player at Kansas State during his career. 42 games for the Wildcats over the last 4 seasons. Started 14 games last year. A great athlete. He ran a 4.38 40-yard dash and has a 37-inch vertical jump. And like you said, was a tryout player during rookie minicamp. Just kind of fell through the cracks, but impressed. There was 50 tryout players at rookie minicamp, and he was one of 2 that got signed. And he's still here and then running with the first team today because there's some injuries at corner. He has consistently looked the part, and I'm very excited to see what he can do in the preseason.
Where does this group of DBs, especially the young guys, go from here? Now, we mentioned some postseason picks, but we're going to transition out of running backs. But before we do, the next step for these guys is to make big impact plays in the regular season. The Chiefs only had 11 interceptions last year, only 11. 3 were from L'Jarius Sneed, and only 5, I believe, were from cornerbacks. And Williams only had the 1 in the regular season against the 49ers. Watson had the 99-yarder. McDuffie had none. Next step for these guys is to increase that total by either 50% or even by 2/3, if you would, and make defensive big plays to turn games around. This group has shown that propensity so far in this camp. Now let's transition to the running back position. There are 6 running backs in this camp. Your thoughts overall and how they've done?
Well, it's exciting because it's a very talented group. And for the first time in a long time, we don't have a fullback on the roster right now, which could open the door for a player who might not have made the team originally at running back, might make the team this time around. So the running back room is very talented. We have a great veteran presence with McKinnon, but also some young players. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still a young player in this league. Deneric Prince is a player we're very excited about as a UDFA. And of course, Isaiah Pacheco took the world by storm last year. All very good players who provide fresh legs from this backfield.
You look at these guys, last year, McKinnon, who had a productive career with the Minnesota Vikings, and he had it was rough for him, but he came fighting back. In the fact, when you look at, he was only one of he's only won 7 running backs in NFL history to have 9 receiving touchdowns. And the way he ended the year, 7 consecutive weeks with a touchdown reception, is an all-time NFL record. Isaiah Pacheco was carrying the bulk of the carries, 61% of the carries from week 10 on for this team. You mentioned Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But you had a chance to talk to a guy who has become one of the stories of this camp, and it goes back again, an undrafted free agent that right now will make this team.
This is why Mitch and I, during our draft live stream, say keep paying attention after the draft is over, because we're going to add players in free agency that are going to help us win games. So far, Deneric Prince out of the University of Tulsa is looking like a player who's going to help us win games this year. I had a chance to catch up with Deneric after practice yesterday and see how things are going so far. All right, we're joined now by rookie running back Deneric Prince. And Deneric, you've really flashed throughout this camp. Just how are things going for you so far?
I feel like things has been going good for me. Just been out here learning and getting better and just learning from the vets that's in front of me.
There's a lot of talent in this running back room. Begins with guys like Clyde, McKinnon, and then, of course, Isaiah Pacheco. What have you learned from those guys so far in your short time together?
Lately, they just been teaching me the playbook, teach me pass pro and how to read all my runs.
It seems like catching the football is something you've been really excelling at throughout this camp. How much pride do you take in being a receiver out of the backfield?
I take a lot of pride in that. I just feel like it's my versatility, just show my ability to catch out the backfield. I feel like that's going to separate me.
And you mentioned pass protection. That's one of the things maybe fans don't really think about from the running back position, but it's so important, especially for a guy like you trying to make this team. How much pride do you take in your pass protection, and where do you think you are with that right now?
Take a lot of pride in that. You got to be able to protect the quarterback. So, I just feel like I've been growing at it. I feel like I've been getting better.
All right, Deneric Prince, a man of few words, but he's let his play do the talking here over the course of training camp. Let's talk about what he did in college. He averaged more than 5 yards per carry in each of the last 3 seasons at Tulsa. He's also a great athlete. He ran a 4.41 40-yard dash, was 4th among all running backs at the Combine, and had a 10-foot, 5-inch broad jump, 5th among all running backs at the Combine. And it's not just as a runner, it's also as a kick return man is where we think he has a great shot at making this team. Dave Toba said that he's the leader in the clubhouse right now to be our kick returner this season. Let's see how he does in the preseason, but he has a great shot at making this team as a kick return man and as a running back.
Had a touchdown again today. He's had several of them in this camp. He didn't catch a lot at Tulsa. One of the knocks was, can he be a really good receiver? And in this offense, running backs have to do that. Protection is always going to be an issue for a young running back. And that's why having McKinnon here is basically a tutor for these guys. It's helped Pacheco out. But we have seen Deneric Prince be an absolute weapon at the 3rd level on some deep throws here. He started his career at Texas A&M, then he transferred to Tulsa out of a Houston area, Manville High School. But here's what I really like about him. And you growing up, your favorite teams in your boyhood, we've talked about these on Defending the Kingdom podcast, were those mid-2000s teams,
oh,
right?
Yeah.
The man that mentored Deneric Prince to get him ready for the National Football League, Derek Blaylock.
Wow.
You remember Derek Blaylock?
Of course I do.
And Blaylock he had the one day he had like 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But Derek Blaylock is, I think, one of the primary reasons Deneric Prince has a chance to make this team and maybe help this team win games this year, because he just has that guy that's helping him get ready for the National Football League and the rigors thereof.
Are those connections great? It just makes it all feel like a family. I just love it. But Deneric has gotten a lot of opportunities during this camp, and Coach Reed has talked about that. He's getting a ton of reps because they want to see what he can do. And it's not just as a runner, it's also with the pass pro. That's incredibly important if you're going to make this team as an undrafted free agent. Can you protect at running back. And also just as a receiver out of the backfield, he's ran so many different routes throughout this camp, but he's looked really comfortable with the wheel route up the sideline where he comes out of the backfield, catches a deep pass from Patrick Mahomes or whoever the quarterback may be deep down the sideline. He's just looked great, and he has to keep it going. That's the grind of camp. You can't just look good early on. You have to keep it going throughout all of August and the preseason. But so far, I think we might have something in Deneric Prince.
Again, mentioned there are 6 running backs in this camp. Another's LaMichael Pirine. If you remember, you're a Jet fan maybe and converted over to the Chiefs, you remember him. He had some time with the Jets. His cousin is Samaje Pirine, who scored against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game for Cincinnati in 2021. He's now a Denver Bronco and might be their RB1 depending on what happens to Javonte Williams. But in LaMichael Pirine is shown some glimpses in this camp, and then you throw in Jerrion Ealy. Ole Miss was very productive at Ole Miss as a 4-year player for them in the SEC, and there's always been this kind of moving Jerrion around. He's still listed as a wide receiver. Don't be tricked by that. He's been in every RB drill, and we saw it happen kind of at the end of the summer. Like, nope, Jerrion, just stay with the running backs.
Yeah, Jerrion's kind of a jack of all trades. I remember when I talked to him last year when he first signed as an undrafted free agent, he described himself as a Swiss Army knife that has all the different things that come out of it because he can do a little bit of everything. He can return kicks and punts, be a running back, and also be a wide receiver. Just a useful player that was on the practice squad last year, and I think he'll have a big role in the preseason. And LaMichael Pirine, former 4th-round pick from the Jets in 2020, just see what you have in the guy. He signed in January, I believe, joined the Chiefs during the playoff run, didn't play at all, but was on the practice squad for the playoff run. He's played a little bit in this league. He has 263 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on 72 attempts in 2 seasons with New York from 2020 to 21. So trying to catch on with this Chiefs running back room. I want to talk about Jerick McKinnon a little bit more, though, because we can't understate how important he was to this team last year. Just truly amazing. I call him the sneaky MVP of this team last season because 803 total yards, 10 touchdowns. His 9 touchdowns from week 13 through the end of the season led the NFL. Nobody had more touchdowns than Jerick McKinnon from week 13 through the end of the regular season and was such a spark plug on this team. Think about the Raiders game in week 5. The Chiefs were trailing by 17 points early, and then Jerick breaks off like a 30-yard run, and it was an avalanche from there. Or the 49ers game later in the season. Things weren't going very well for the Chiefs in the middle of that game. The 49ers had some momentum. It was 3rd and 20, and Jerick catches a screen, breaks a bunch of tackles, gets a first down. The Chiefs go on to win that game by a whole bunch. So I'm so glad Jerick McKinnon is back in this room. I know every single running back in this room is really happy he's back as well.
And the walk-off against the Houston Texans at 1-12-1, and he says, I'll take it, and I'll end it. His red zone targets as a running back were 2nd last year in the National Football League, only to Austin Eckler.
Wow.
And we know what Eckler means to the Chargers. With Jerick McKinnon, what's really easily overlooked in the run to the Super Bowl championship last year was one of the big adjustments in losing Tyreek Hill. And you and I saw it in the spring and summer in camp. We're seeing it again, is the role of the running back in the receiving game. It's the next step for Isaiah Pacheco, quite honestly.
Sure.
And we've seen Deneric Prince do it. I really think 4 running backs will make this team because there is no fullback. But all 4 of those need to protect the quarterback, but they also need to be effective in the receiving game at all 3 levels of attack, not just check downs and throws and angles and circles, but those deep throws. And we've seen Pacheco doing it at camp, trying to work on it. But that, to me, is the next step for the running back room.
I completely agree. I think Isaiah has grown a lot in that area. Let's talk about Isaiah a little bit and what he did last year. From week 10 through the end of the regular season last year, he ranked 5th in the NFL in rushing yards with 633. Here are the names that were ahead of him: Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, and Derrick Henry. Nobody else had more rushing yards for Isaiah Pacheco from week 10 through the end of the regular season. In that same span, he recorded at least 60 rushing yards in 9 of 12 games. He was the 22nd running back taken in the draft last year. He ended up with the 4th most rushing yards of any rookie. And think about what he did in the playoffs. Averaged 5.3 yards per carry in the postseason. He came up huge in the Super Bowl time and time again. Of course, he had that touchdown run, but don't forget about the game-winning drive. It was 3rd down, and Isaiah breaks off a 10-yard rush to keep the game-winning drive alive, and we all know what happened after that. He was just tremendous, and I totally agree. The next step for him in this offense is, can you be a viable receiver? And so far we've seen really great things in that area from him during this camp.
His 39-yard run is underrated, too, against Jacksonville, part of the 98-yard drive led by last year backup quarterback Chad Henne. Half of that was a run by Isaiah Pacheco. We're excited about the running back group, something to keep an eye on and watch during the preseason games and the rest of the practices here in St. Joe. Our reports, our live streams from here in St. Joseph are brought to you by the great folks at Mosaic. They're awesome. Not only helping with training camp, they've been a partner with the Chiefs ever since we started camp here back in 2010. But what they do every day for all of you, especially as a regional hub in healthcare and wellness, is one of the great things of the Chiefs Kingdom. Whether you live in southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa, northeast Kansas, or, of course, northwest Missouri, the hub of that four-state area is Mosaic, so we appreciate them. All right, let's just talk as we wrap it up here, where we go from here. Another workout here again tomorrow. It's Family Fun Day. There'll be probably 9,000 folks out here. Let's hope the weather holds up. Then a day off, and then you start to get into you don't game plan for the New Orleans Saints. But even having the Hall of Fame game last night starts to think, well, when do the Chiefs play? I think we're the last team or next to last team to play their first preseason game. But next week you see that wheel kind of start to turn and the compass pointed toward New Orleans.
And even though it's just an exhibition game, and like you said, the Chiefs don't game plan for that matchup, it's still a great chance to see what these guys can do when the lights are on and against an opponent, not just themselves in practice. We're going to learn a lot about the young players on this team and the guys that are fighting to make this roster in that preseason game against the Saints. And one thing we always say, I encourage everyone to keep watching the game even after the starters depart. I don't know how long they'll play, but watch the game in the third and the fourth quarter, because there are going to be players that play in those third and fourth quarters that are going to help us win games this season. And you want to know who they are before week 8 rolls around and they make a big play.
So we'll have another live stream coming from camp on the upcoming days, but we continue to grind away here and be the first team in 20 years to try to win back-to-back Super Bowls. He's Matt McMullen, senior team reporter. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. We may see you at camp. If not, we're going to do all we can to keep you updated. Thanks for joining us on this Friday.